Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of, let's see if I can get it, the Hollywood Critics Association Moon Knight After Show. That is a mouthful. We are on to, I feel like every Marvel series, episode 4 is the one where you go, wait, what just happened? It's the OMG WTF episode. That is exactly what we got today with Moon Knight before we dive into episode 4, because we have a lot to talk about. And then a lot of, is it Mephisto? Who is it? Because that's always the theory. It's Mephisto. Before we get into that, we're going to let you guys know who we are. I'm Tessa Smith. You guys can find me everywhere at Mama's Geeky, mamasgeeky.com, Mama's Geeky on all social, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere, here on YouTube. And Josie, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you?
Of course. Well, my name is Josie. You can find me at the Josie Marie on Twitter and Letterboxd. I also am the founder of Film Posers, and you can find us at Film Posers basically everywhere.
Awesome. And Andrea.
Hi, I'm Andrea. You can find me writing at EW. You can also find me writing at IGN. And you can find me on Twitter at _A_Towers. I'm going to try to do it. Kind of. My arm looks deformed, but
you got it. I can't ever do it. I did it. All right, Michael, it's on you. It's on you now. Where can everyone find you? Oh, you're muted.
I write for, as Tess has been saying, I am Michael J. Lee, and you can find me at Geeks of Doom, Ratchet LA, We Live Entertainment, and The Nerds of Color. And I write for my handles are I am Michael J. Lee.
You got it that time. You got it. Listen, Josie, this has been our thing. We just can't get it for some reason. We can't get it. But now we're on par today, guys. I guess we've been practicing.
Can I just say, real quick, I love the porgs in the background with Michael.
Oh yeah, I know.
I have a murder of porgs. I think that's what they refer to it.
Well, I'm excited to have you with us this time, Josie. She's new to the show, which is very exciting. Episode 4, man, that's the one to.
The screeners came in, and I was like, I volunteer. Let me.
Yes,
I'm ready.
Please, yes, I know, and especially for episode 4, man, this one. It's good to have more people because I don't think any of us know exactly what the heck is going on. So let's start off with overall thoughts, just no main details, but just what was your thoughts? Josie, you can go first.
So for me, Moon Knight, at first, I wasn't as enamored with the series, which maybe was because I had such high expectations, but episode 4 is that one, like we were saying, it's the one that really turned everything on its head for me. And I was like, wait, I love this. And also I've gone back and rewatched episode 1 specifically because it had its premiere, and then episode 2, and I'm catching up again. And honestly, what I love is that after episode 4, you just realize that the show has a really good rewatchability factor because you'll always be able to find something new. And I think that that's a very good point for them. 5 points for you.
It's always great when you can go back and rewatch something, because there's certainly, I know there's movie shows that we're all like, I've seen it. I'm good. I don't need to ever watch this again, and I will be perfectly happy. And this is the one that, it tends to be with all Marvel stuff, though. I got to be honest, but I get the screeners, and my husband does not like to watch the screeners. So I'm very excited to always go back and watch them with him when they come out, which sometimes there's shows I'll get screeners for, and I'll be like, you can just watch it yourself. I'm good. I don't need to, but definitely not Moon Knight. I'm looking forward to it each and every week. Andrea, how did you feel about episode 4 as a whole?
I loved it. I mean, for me, kind of the same thing. I've been enjoying, I wasn't sure how much I would like the series when it started because I'm not, this is the first Disney Plus series that we've had where I don't know the character and don't know the comic backstory as well. But, like Josie was saying, the show has really sold me so far, and I've really enjoyed each episode I've seen. And then 4, this just blew me out of the water. I mean, it tied up, didn't tie things up, but it brought, it brought together a lot of things that I had been wondering about. And I think it really kicked it up into high gear for the last 2 episodes. So I was it kept me on the edge of my seat, definitely.
Michael, how about you? What'd you think?
I've been enjoying this evolution of the show because it started from as this, dark psychological thriller, and it's now going into this whole treasure hunting, but still retaining some of that, psychological thriller aspect to it. So yeah, I'm on board with what you guys are saying so far, but I'm just liking to add how there's these changes, and it's seamless. These changes, basically, there's no, it doesn't feel out of place. It just all adds to the quality of the show.
Yeah, I think something that I had said back with the first episode, but after watching the first 4 screeners, it almost felt like a 2-hour long movie. Like I felt like I was in a movie. It really progressed well. It all worked together well. And the pacing, I was really impressed with, because with these hour-long shows, it's not what we're used to for all of the Marvel shows. So it was nice, and it really just, that episode 4 was like, get ready for the last 20 minutes. We're gonna
blow your mind.
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. So let's start at the beginning of the episode, though. I did really, really enjoy the whole Steve and Mark and Layla thing, where Steven is like, oh, by the way, Mark left. And Mark's like, no, that's not what happened. I just kind of love that. And now he's like telling Layla, we made this deal. It's okay. And then they kind of, him and Layla have their moment and they kiss finally, I feel like. But I like how Steven, before they kiss, was like, hold on, I got to tell you the truth. No. Mark's been pushing you away because of everything that's been going on with him. Khonshu wants to make you his next avatar. And I just love, again, it goes to the whole Steven. Listen, Josie, the last 3 episodes have been the we want to hug Steven show.
I agree.
We're just like, I just want to hug him and be like, you did the right thing. And then you still got to kiss the girl. I love it. Josie, how did you feel about the whole beginning with Steven, Mark, and Layla?
I really just had to go back, because I guess it's mostly because going back and forth between Mark, Steven, and Layla, it kind of threw me off at first. Mostly, I don't know what to put my finger on, because just at first it was weird for me. But then, again, the rewatchability factor, I got more attached. I started seeing more of the individual characters, because at first my thing was, I didn't think we spent enough time with each of them for me to feel a connection. The most I felt a connection to was Steven, which is why if anyone hurts them, I will hurt them back. But once we got to see more of Mark, especially with that mysterious, who did that? And then Steven and Mark are like, I don't know. So it's just trying to figure everything out. But once we got to that moment, just episode 4 is what, again, turned me around on everything, because we finally got to see that connection that I was craving between Mark and Steven. We got to see them interact. And that moment when Mark is like, thank you for telling her. It's like, okay, I like this. Because the reason why Steven is there is like a coping mechanism, as far as we know. Because again, episode 4 turns everything on its head. But I like seeing that interaction, and I like that we saw more of Layla this episode, because I was waiting for her to have more to work with, and this episode was like the Layla episode. I was also half expecting Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz to show up.
I know.
Yeah,
it really was.
That's all I could think about.
I know. Well, it's very clearly inspired by, right? Andrea, so how did you feel about just this opening moments and Steven getting to kiss the girl?
I just also love that Steven had all this confidence, seeing him talk that way about Mark and be like, okay, wait, let me tell you, this is what Mark's doing to you, because I care about you, I've learned to care about you, and let me just tell you what's going on and that kind of stuff. And the way that he's like, oh yeah, Mark's not here anymore, and he's like, I'm totally confident, I have this, I can totally take over this body. I love seeing that, and because it's, he went from this little meek, I need a hug. He still always needs a hug. Let's be clear.
That's true.
But just seeing that confidence come out after the last 3 episodes, and everything that he's gone through, and starting to evolve in that way was really fun. And like Josie was saying, I love seeing Steven and Mark kind of have more of a they're starting to have more of a connection with each other. Because I know I've said this before on the show, and I think it's a probably a pretty obvious thing, but to me, Mark can't exist without Steven, and Steven can't exist without Mark, and they're both very integral parts of each other that are the best and worst parts of each other, and they help each other understand each other. And I think this was just a really nice kind of moment where they got to kind of connect on that level and be like, okay, yeah, we got like we're kind of getting it. So
they're getting better. They're getting
yeah,
better.
they're getting better. They're getting there. They're starting
Yeah.
to understand each other.
Yes. Michael, how did you feel about just the opening moments here?
Yeah, going to what Josie was saying, I like seeing how Layla got into action. We got to see her have her moment, or hopefully she has more. She's very sly, very crafty. She knows what to do in that kind of situation. But going on to Mark and Steven's relationship, we get to see that whole, I guess, relationship evolve, especially for Steven, because as we were saying, he started out as timid, mild mannered. Now he's got this confidence because he's watching all this action, all the events transpire through Mark's eyes, I guess, just like in the backseat, so to speak. And now we get to see him like, oh, this is what Layla likes. I guess I can put do this or put the moves on her, sort of thing, because this is what she likes. And I especially like that kind of character development, because now he's more of a character with more depth, no longer this kind of one-dimensional kind of scaredy cat kind of character. So
yeah, it was nice to see him get this confidence that's kind of slowly been building over the last 2 episodes, but really came out at the beginning of this one. And again, I still want to give him a hug though, and you're just like, good job, Steven, good job. But then they
pat on the back.
I know, pat on the back, good job, Steven. But when they entered the tomb, this was like full on like Mummy for me. Obviously, this is when it really happens. But can we talk about how like terrifying it was at the same time? Like the clicking and everything that was going on, the score. I was like, oh, they're ramping it up into like full on horror now, which we've gotten glimpses of, more psychological thriller. Like I think it was Michael that was saying, right? But now we're like, oh, we're going to throw some horror in there and brutality that we're not used to in the MCU. He literally talks about meat chunks on that one thing, like whether the blood is. And it's like, oh, we're going there. We're going there. I don't know. Josie, how did you feel about just the beginning of them getting into the tomb and really embracing that horror and brutal element that we haven't seen in the MCU before?
Yeah, no, with this episode, it was the first time I truly like felt that fear watching it, because with the other episodes, I think it was because I watched it like in pure daylight, where I was like, that's okay. Khonshu's heading towards him. That's fine. That's not scary. But then with this one, I was like, it was night. I was watching it. I'm like, maybe this will help. And I was like, yes, it did. I was terrified. The clicking noise, and also just that whole scene when, because this episode, like, again, it's the 4th episode. We're at the midpoint. They were like, all or nothing. And especially with Layla, it was that scene specifically where she's trying to cross.
Oh,
and I was like, please don't. I care about you. Don't die. And then you could hear the clicking noise, and I was like, yes, fear.
Yeah. It is. It was like intense. It is that clicking noise. It's just like every horror movie tends to find the thing that you hear. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it's just like, And the jump scares. Like, I know it's like the next scene, but when she gets like pulled into that crevice, I was like, what? I screamed. I was on a plane and I screamed. I
wasn't on a plane, but I screamed.
People were probably like, what is wrong with this girl? Andrea, how did you feel about them really dialing up the horror in this?
I felt very irrational sitting there going, okay, like Layla can't die. Like I know in my heart they're not gonna like take away Layla before 2 episodes.
Your heart of hearts.
Like that would be dumb, Marvel. So I'm like, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. And I'm like, yes, of course you're gonna be okay. But my mind was so like, I was so terrified for her in that moment. But I love how they really kind of got back into the horror of it, because we saw a little bit, throughout like the first 3 episodes, we've had that horror vibe and that more like spookier kind of vibe, or like mystery adult kind of vibe. But I think this was the first time we really got like those real like kind of horror classic vibes. Like they're like obviously like Khonshu's like terrifying, and there are things in the show that have been like a little creepy, but this is like the first time we really kind of saw all of that come together. And I love how much they're leaning into it, because it just proves that Marvel will really go anywhere and not be afraid of it. Like this show is so different from anything they've done. And they're clearly, they're like, yeah, we're just, people are going to love it no matter what.
I'm telling you, that guard's like straight up murdering one of Harrow's men, like on that thing in front of them, and the way they're hiding. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is he going to drop something? And he's going to bend over and he's going to see Layla there. Like, what's going to happen? And so Steven kind of saves Layla, right? Making the noise. Yeah. That whole moment was just, again, Steven with the confidence though. Yes.
I want to give him a hug. See?
Proud of our boy, Michael.
Yeah. You're doing amazing, sweetie.
Yeah, exactly. Michael, how did you feel about the horror elements in this episode?
They really ramped it up in this one. I was not expecting it to be so dark and scary, especially like you were mentioning in the crevice. They were just looking to this like dark void, and something's gonna pop out, and I know it, and then it still gets you, sort of thing. And I like how they really, I guess the writers and the director, because there's no way anyone else could have pulled that off like in any other superhero realm. So I'm glad that Marvel is kind of embracing these new genres or subgenres within the superhero realm.
Yeah, it's so good. Like, I love horror. That's my like jam. So for them to mix it with Marvel, which is also my jam, is like, I'm surprised at how much I'm loving this series. Kind of like Andrea had said before, this is someone I didn't know too much about when it comes to the comics compared to like Hawkeye and like even Falcon and Winter Soldier and everybody else. Wanda, I mean, I could go on. And so I was very cautiously optimistic going into this series, but seeing them really fully embrace this horror that I think even people have watched, the first couple episodes, I feel like they even take it way big step up here. And I love that they are just willing to fully embrace it. And that moment with Layla, when she takes like his hand, doesn't she like tap his arm? And she's like basically stab him through the eye with the flare, and she's got his arm graphic. In one hand. It's crazy.
Yeah, then he's trying to like murder her with his own bones. I'm like, oh my gosh. Marvel's really going for it.
It's crazy. It's just not what I expected, but fully embracing it and absolutely loving it. And then of course we go from this intense scene here to, Harrow showing up and kind of being like, I have a secret to tell you, which they kind of hinted at already. But, I also kind of figured at the beginning, right when they enter the tomb, Layla kind of says something about her dad, and they talk about her dad a little bit. And that's usually a hint of like, we've talked about it before on the show. Marvel lays the breadcrumbs early. They go, okay, we're gonna do this, but we'll give you a little background first. We'll subtly work it into the conversation, and then we're gonna throw it at you. So, was anyone surprised, or Josie, we can start with you. Were you surprised that Mark maybe had something to do with Layla's father's murder?
I wasn't surprised, but I was very intrigued by how they handled it, because you would think the way he made it sound obviously was like, oh, he murdered your father in cold blood. He's a blood-sucking killer. And she's like, no, you're wrong. And then she leaves. But then when he's explaining it, he's like, I was there, but I was a bystander. And I'm like, okay, that seems like, because again, he is the Marvel lead. He can't truly be like outright like murdering her father. So I was like, okay, this makes sense. But the fact that they still like doubled down, like, yeah, he was there, he witnessed it, he could have done something and he didn't. And I was like, okay, this goes in part with the character, and that's conflict. So I liked it, but I wasn't expecting I thought they would, considering everything we saw before that, I thought they would be like, yeah, he murdered your dad.
Right, he flat out shot him in the back of the head and killed him. Andrea, how did you feel? Like, I feel like they laid the groundwork pretty well. So it wasn't a surprise, but it was still interesting the way they handled it. How did you feel?
No, they did. And I mean, you had to expect that something like that was coming. I mean, when he said it, I wasn't like, oh my God, this is like so unexpected. But you also like, you believe, I mean, Mark is a mercenary, and you know how ruthlessly he kills, and it's, he could have, like, you know, just shot him in the back of the head. Like, you know, it was very believable. Like, when Harrow's saying it, it's very believable that you could see Mark, like, getting angry, killing her dad, you know, being the cause of that. So, you know, like, when he was trying to explain himself and saying, I mean, I do wonder how true that is. That's the other thing. I'm like, was he telling the truth about that? And I, you know, that's the first thing that goes through my head whenever I'm like, no, I didn't do it. I swear. Like, he's, you know, the bad guy is totally wrong about this. I'm like, are you? I mean, I would like to give him the benefit of the doubt because I like to think Mark is a lot better than, you know, what we've seen, like, you know, and that's why we're kind of getting more insight into him. But I guess, you know, we'll obviously see how that plays out. But I thought it was a very interesting way of handling it. And I thought it was a really good way to, this is the midpoint episode. It's things we had kind of, you know, the mysteries, and we had things built up. And this is another kind of big drop of information that's obviously going to be important going into the final 2 episodes, and how it affects Stephen and Mark and how it affects Layla. So I'm excited to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, well, it's like you say, there's always 3 sides to every story, right? This story, and then the actual truth. So, like,
right,
you know, exactly what is going on here and how much did Mark have to do with it? Who knows? But Michael, how did you feel about this kind of reveal about Layla's father?
I like everyone was saying, I liked how they tied it in, doing that little research that I did. I knew he was part of the group that it was involved, like, in the tomb raiding for the Khonshu piece, and then realizing how he got Khonshu through all these murders, or he thought he was murdered, somehow involved in it. I like how they tied that into Layla's story, and yeah, so that was a pretty nice reveal. Yeah, that's all I have to say. You guys it's so great.
Yeah, no, I do love that how they tied it in, and then of course he keeps saying he was left for dead, which you know, from the comics, like, he literally dies and Khonshu brings him back to life. So perhaps that's where we're going with this. Feels like that is, and that's obviously why they're tied as avatars. Right. But speaking of avatars, so they're looking for Amit's little statue, whatever you want to call it, right? That's the whole point why they're here in this tomb. And so then Stephen kind of like geeks out, which I kind of loved, like little bit of fangirled over finding out that that Alexander the Great was the final avatar of Amit. But speaking of bringing things to the next level, he literally breaks off the jaw of the mummy and, like, shoves his arm inside to get the little Amit statue, whatever you want to call it. Josie, how did you feel about that scene and how far he was willing to go?
I was thinking about it earlier when we were talking about, like, going to the extreme, and that was the first scene that came to my mind, because I was like, wait, I was watching and I'm like, they're not actually doing this, and then, oh yeah, they're going there. So props to them again for being very concise in, like, this entire episode, because I was like, yes, that is the next step you're gonna take. Stephen is just gonna go right into Alexander the Great's corpse and pull out Amit.
It was like he's like arm deep in, it was so nasty. Andrea,
I was like, they're doing that. Okay, props to you guys.
Andrea, how did you feel about
that kind of stuff? Like, I'm not a horror person. I enjoy, like, the aspects of horror, but I'm not someone, like, who will sit down and be like, I love to watch Scream. I love to watch, like, you know, the slasher things. Like, that's just not my vibe. But I do get, like, I get much more, like, freaked out or grossed out, or, like, I cannot watch this if it's something like someone like with an eyeball, or someone like drilling like someone's head, like stuff like that, rather than like actual like slashers or like jump scares or whatever. So for me, when he's like, I'm just gonna stick my hand right down like there, and I don't know what's down there, but it's, you know, it's gross, and it's like a mummy thing, like that got me more than like, that's the kind of thing like, oh, like, could I do that? No, props to you, Stephen.
Again, right? Good job, Stephen. Good job, Stephen.
I know you're really going for it with your love for this material, but also that takes some guts.
Yeah. Oh, right in there. I don't know, Michael. How did you feel about them again adding another brutal layer to this show?
They're really going for it, and they're just committed to this whole this whole vibe that they say, you know what, we're going to be horror, we're going to stick with it, and we're going to ramp it up when we need to, and we're going to pull it back. But they're just going, they're hitting the ground running, and they're not looking back. So yeah, that's what I love.
They don't care. And that's what I love about it. Like, I mean, I think we had mentioned it before, but Kevin Feige had said that all of these like Disney Plus shows, at least for now, are all going to have different genres. And I mean, they are not kidding. When they were like, we're going horror, they're like, oh, we're going to go horror, and we're just not going to stop. But then they decide to like mess with us too, because of course it's Marvel, and why not? So before we get to the big twist, I just want to mention and see how you guys think the visuals here when so Harrow breaks in, and they're like, he doesn't even care. He just like shoots Mark. He's like 2 seconds and give it to me. Or it's Steven. Well, it's technically Mark at that time because Layla was yelling at him. So now it's Mark. Gets confusing who it's who. But it's Mark. He gets shot. The visuals of him falling, I thought that was absolutely gorgeous. Him falling back into the water. I went back and I watched it several times. And it's like awful. Like he got shot and it was beautiful. But like I just felt like the visuals were done so well. And just, again, adds to Marvel not playing around with these series and giving them the budget that they deserve.
It reminded me a little bit of that scene in Shang-Chi where he falls into the water.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like a really beautiful scene where like, even though it's like not a happy thing, like, but you see him like fall, but that's like what it reminded me of, that same visual of being like very ethereal and very like kind of haunting and we don't know what's going on, and just the way they shot it.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's him falling back, but then even when he hits the water, it's like continuing on with the light and the dark. And I thought it was, they basically prepared us. They're like, we're about to blow your mind and change, flip your world upside down, get ready. But enjoy this visual piece as we go there. Josie, how did you feel about that moment?
Yeah, I agree with you both. It was just very visually pleasing. I definitely see the Shang-Chi reference, and again, beautiful moments, even though they're kind of sad because we were seeing these characters die. And just it also gave kind of like a Jordan Peele kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Like the sinking. Yeah. But yeah, it was really nice. And it just prepares you for what's going to happen next, where you're like, oh, I don't know what I've been watching at all.
Michael, you got anything else to say about that moment?
That was pretty much it, because you let down your guard, sort of like, it just can't end this way. He's sinking into this light, and it feels sad that it just can't end this way. And then it's like it's brighter. It's like it's brighter. We find out, big reveal.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly, you're right. So I was thinking to myself, wait, is this going to be the end of the episode? Because they always end on a cliffhanger.
Right.
And I thought, there's still quite a bit of time left. I paused it to look.
Wait, there's more.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more. Can we talk about, before we get into like the actual craziness, the fact that they give us this horrible budgeted movie, like, I was like, what is happening? Are we back in like...
It was so... I'm glad I wasn't the only one who's sitting there. I'm like, did something... Like, did I fall asleep at some point in between, like, without knowing it, and I wasn't paying attention, and now I'm watching something completely different?
It was like, it reminded me of in WandaVision when they would have the commercials.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, wait, what's happening here? Then they're going on. And then when he's like, you're Dr. Stephen Grant, I was like, oh, hold on. That's not Stephen. So what is happening here? Josie, how did you feel when that awful movie, I don't even know how else to describe it, pops up on screen and changes everything?
That was the moment that everything changed for me too, because for mostly I was just a happy spectator watching the show as a critic, of course, but also as a Marvel fan. And I was like vibing. I binged all 4 shows one after the other. And that was the moment where I was like, oh, it's time to theorize. Let's get our thinking caps on, the tinfoil hats. That was the moment where everything changed for me, where I was like, okay, I clearly don't know what's been going on. I don't know what's happening. It's time to theorize. Is Mephisto up in here? So that was the moment where everything changed, not only in the show, but for me as a viewer. It's just, you just realize like, oh, we've been like cats chasing a string and someone pulled it and we were like, Kevin Feige, stop it.
Right. What are you doing to us, Andrea? You have anything else to add about that crazy just
that
bait
it
switch?
was the same thing. It was like the moment where, like, you know, you're watching the show and it's like you have the mysteries and you think you know what's going on, and there's all this, like, there's all these layers, and then you get to this and it's just like, what just happened? And like you said, this is the one that's going to launch like the 16 million think posts and theories that like everyone is going to be writing stuff for like the next day or two about this, because it's just it throws such a wrench in everything.
All the YouTube videos, this episode explained.
Yep.
And then it's just going to be, we don't know how to explain it, but this is our guess because we have no idea. Michael, how did you feel about that lovely movie, that wonderfully edited, high budget film that we saw
with the Power Rangers production value, basically? But the way that whole sequence goes into, I was just like, okay, there's the lights getting brighter, and then you notice the whole the aspect ratio was not quite as you know like normal episodes, because there's like a whole square 16 by 19 aspects. Like, this looks different, and all of a sudden you reveal it's like a whole movie, or not a whole movie, but like one of those very low budget, directed straight to video kind of movies. And like, wow, this is completely unexpected and not what I was, not the direction I expected it to go to. And I was pleasantly surprised, and I just liked the whole thing, how it all played out.
Yeah, and then so like, if that's not crazy enough, where you're like, what is happening? All of a sudden you're in a hospital, a mental hospital, and everyone who's there has been in the show already. There's like his boss from the museum. There's these people that the guy we literally just straight up murdered by the guard is there. And some of them are orderlies and some of them are patients. And it's just like, what is going on? And then we see Mark, I guess, not Steven, because he's Mark at this point, just in this chair, completely doped up. And there's like a little Moon Knight toy or whatever, because it's not Khonshu, but it's like the toy of the suit he turns into. And it gets even more crazy. And it just was like, he's sitting there, he's talking about Steven. And then Layla comes up and is all like, she steals his bingo card. Like, what?
Like, I'll share the winning with you. I'll share the prize with you. Yes.
This time, I promise I'll do it this time. And you're like, what is happening? So before he even goes and gets moved to who is in charge, right? This moment is just bonkers. And this is where you're like, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know. Josie, how did you feel seeing all these characters we've already seen as completely different characters?
I was so confused. That was the moment where I was like, I give up trying to be one step ahead. I'm just going to go along for the ride. And even then, like, by the end, I was still like, okay. But it was, again, it was that moment where I was like, okay, let's try theorizing. Like, are we in his head? Are we like seeing like his, not his life flash before his eyes, but like, maybe he's still like in limbo. Maybe he's not really dead from the gun wounds. Like, I tried to make sense of it, and then I just gave up, and I was like, I'm just gonna go along for the ride.
Yeah, because then you're also like, but is this the reality? Has he been like, have we been in his head the whole time?
And then you're like, what did everything before this moment mean? And you're just trying to make sense of everything we've seen before. And like, again, when we saw that low budget B movie with Dr. Stephen Grant, it's like, oh, is that what inspired Stephen? Like, what's going on? Just so many questions, because again, it is that character. He's like that Indiana Jones type person. He like knows all about like Egyptian mythology and everything, and just the Moon Knight toy also. I was just like, again, so confused.
Right, when they threw that in there, it's like, okay, the people, you're kind of like, all right, like, sure, and then the Moon Knight toy, and you're like, hold on, what's going on? And the drawings that you're seeing, and there's like a Khonshu drawing at some point, and it's just like, well, I don't know what's happening. Andrea, how did you feel about all that
I was doing the same thing when they showed that, and I'm like, okay, so is this like his dream? Like, they clearly just shot him. So is this like he's in that weird limbo state where this is what he's like thinking about, or like, you know, he's dreaming about. And then, but then like once you saw like the Moon Knight toy and like everything else, then I was the same thing. I started being like, I don't know what's going on. Like, you know, is then the same thing? Is this the reality? I mean, you don't, you know, like maybe it is, and how it's just, yeah, this episode broke me. And I don't pretend to be, I can theorize very well about like characters I really, really know and their backstory. So like if I really know a character and like their comic history or whatever,
like we called in Hawkeye, like we
yeah,
called
like
in Hawkeye.
I could call things in like Hawkeye, like I can like theorize things or know where they're going, but like for this show, I'm just like, I'm giving up. Like I don't count myself as like a big, like, I know everything about Marvel. I can figure out every theory, because this proves that I cannot.
I feel like even people who know this
like
character, I don't think there's a direct comic to the. There could be, but Marvel tends to mix them up on purpose to throw everybody off so that nobody knows. Michael, how did you feel about this tour through the mental hospital and seeing all of these people we had already seen?
So my theory that Layla was the most reliable storyteller, the person we can trust the most, it was just thrown out the window once we saw her take that bingo card. It's like, yeah, this is not going to work anymore. I don't know who I can trust, because as we were saying, what happened before, it's like it kind of alludes to those minor blips we see in as Steven Steven was transitioning to Mark. What's happening in those moments? Now we have this whole thing, what happened before, or what happened during his stay, or is anything we saw, is any of it real? So this just threw me for a loop, and I'm just like, I don't know. It's not that I don't like it, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't like it, but I want more.
Right. Yeah. So, I don't like this, but please explain it all to me in detail. I would love to know. Yeah. Because then he gets brought to the head of the hospital, basically, or at least that ward. And it's Harrow, because of course it is. Yeah. I was honestly like, wait, what? And then I was like, how did that surprise me? I should have known this. And the fact that he's wearing those sandals, he has another cane there, you know, and he's talking to him and he's like, hey, I've watched this movie a lot. And he like slides over the VHS. My VHS player still worked. You know, maybe this is where you're getting this information from. And it makes me start to think, like, is he his doctor? Is Mark like coming up with all this stuff? Like, I don't know. Harrow just sells it. Again, like we've said before about Harrow, he's so subtly manipulative, and like it made me as an audience member start to believe him and be like, wait, is this just Mark like in the hospital this whole time? Like this is all in his head. I don't know, Josie, did Harrow convince you, or do you think maybe there's something
I was
else
like,
I'm
gonna stick to Mark. Mark is my guy. I'm gonna try to trust him, but of course it made me question everything. And there was just that moment that really made me respect this episode, and then have a newfound respect for the series as a whole so far. So it was just that moment where I was like, okay, I don't know what to believe, but I will say you guys are setting up some really good final 2 finale episodes. So I hope you stick the landing, because I will be there cheering you on.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like if they keep up this way, they definitely could. It does feel like there's a whole lot they have to reveal in just 2 episodes.
Yeah.
But Marvel's usually pretty good with that. Andrea, how did you feel with Harrow's conversation here? Trying to make Mark think, you know, maybe he is crazy.
I mean, he is convincing, and we've talked about how he's very convincing. And I mean, he has a whole cult of followers, so clearly he's very
a cult leader.
So, but like, you know, but then you go back and, you know, you start to think, and, you know, you're second guessing everything. You're like, well, we watched him work in a museum with like all, like he went to work. So like, was that a dream? Did that take place all in his head? You know, he was supposed to have dinner with someone. Was that like all in, is he living in like this imaginary world? I mean, we don't know, but you know, I mean, I can also, the other side of that is, you know, he's Harrow and he's, you know, villain more or less. So of course you could see him saying like, trying to convince Mark, like stay like, cause I also saw it as like a stay here, like wherever he is, you know, like, in this limbo thing, like, stay here, you're, this is where you're supposed to be, you're in this mental hospital or whatever, as like, obviously he wants Mark out of the way, and Steven would be out of the way. So I also kind of saw it as that too, which is why it makes it very hard to figure out like where they're going with it. Like, is it just a ploy to, like, on Harrow's end to get more of what he wants, and convince and use this to convince him, and because he did just shoot him, and like maybe he knew that was going to happen. I don't know. Or is this really all in his head, and we're getting the first big reveal of like what's we're going to learn more about in the next 2 episodes.
Yeah, and Harrow, we've seen him with powers before.
Right.
So he has, it wasn't like this, but it doesn't mean that he's not using some kind of power to manipulate him as he's in this limbo, right? Like, don't come back to life, because he doesn't really technically have Khonshu right now. Khonshu's like entombed in a statue thing, but we know he can kind of come back to life with Khonshu around. So is he trying to, like, I don't know. Who knows what he's trying to do? Michael, how did you feel about Harrow coming in and just, trying to convince Mark that stay here? You're happy here.
I have to think that now he's the most reliable person you can trust.
That's what he
with
wants.
His master manipulation and ability to convince people. I also have to think that this place of limbo is where all his victims might be ending up. Just a theory there, because like they have to go somewhere. That's my take on the whole thing. But yeah, he's a really guy. He's the kind of guy who uses his words well. He's well spoken, and he can convince you to follow him, and you can put your complete trust in him, knowing that you might end up dead or you might stay alive. So,
depending on what you might do in the future, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like that whole thing is, I don't know, it's crazy. But yeah, then we get to probably maybe my favorite part of the episode. But I love how Mark all of a sudden is like, "Wait, you shot me! I remember that. I'm gonna leave." As he like crawls. Like Oscar Isaac, man, he's killing it in every episode, but this one, so good. And he goes and he literally ends up coming face to face with himself as Steven and Mark, face to face in the same room, touching, like they're together. It's crazy. Love that. And then love how they go past a third sarcophagus, which we've talked about last episode, when they were kind of like, I didn't do it. Did you do it? No, I didn't do it. In the comics, there's Jake Lockley is the other major persona that is kind of well known in the comics. Could it be him trying to get out? We don't see anything. Feels like possibly the reveal for the next one. And then before we get to the crazy very end, which we will leave to discuss after this, because that's when everything even gets crazier. But Josie, how did you feel just kind of about Steven and Mark literally coming face to face in this episode?
That's what made me wonder, like, are we in his head? Are we seeing his him processing everything in that limbo, as Andrea mentioned, after getting shot? And then, of course, Jack Lockley. Probably gonna see him, and I would love to see that simply because it will add more to Oscar Isaac's performance, which, again, he's just been knocking it out of the park every episode, and this show is just a testament to his acting, which he doesn't really need it because we see him. We know him. We know he's a good performer, but still, love seeing it. He carries every single episode, and I love him for that. He's really giving us everything. But that moment really made me wonder, are we in his head? And then, of course, what happens later, I'm like, what's going on? Never mind. Again, it just was a constant cycle of me thinking, like, am I ahead of the game? No, you're not. Stop.
Don't even try. Just back it up. Don't even try. Yeah. Andrea, how did you feel about him getting to actually literally be face to face with himself here?
I'm so glad we finally saw that, because I was wondering if we would see that. And we've obviously seen him come face to face with himself in his reflection, which is different, because even though they're looking at each other, like production wise, it's very different. It's very easy to, have yourself in the reflection. And I know how they do the whole like double thing when you're talking to someone. So it's like the same thing. But I was wondering, like, are we ever going to see both of them like actually face to face talking, with our doubles? And I was very happy that we did, even though I'm still so confused about what's going on. But yeah, Oscar Isaac is just killing it in this. And I mean, I've been a fan of his for a long time, and I've always thought that he's great at what he does. But like every single episode in the show, he's been phenomenal, and I'm so glad they got him for this role.
Oh, he's so good, and he's just proving it time and time again. So to see him play possibly a third person,
yeah, I think that would. I mean, that would kill it for me. I mean, I can't even imagine how good he would be at that if we saw that.
Phenomenal. I think we'll see it because a lot of the, like, especially the end credit scene, the first episode, a lot of the show, especially the production design, I want to shout out the production design because I think they're doing such a good job, especially the practicality. But we do see often, like, if he's facing a mirror, there are 3 mirrors. In the end credits, there are like 3 of each of something. So I'm like, are we getting him? I
actually didn't notice that. So or I didn't think of that. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's
exciting. Michael, how do you feel about him seeing himself? And I mean,
we would. This was kind of an inevitable thing because I was like, you know what, this whole reflection motif, it's clever, but there's got to be more to it. There's got to be more to that kind of relationship, and I'm glad they made this reveal towards in this episode because it was more like it started to feel like a gimmick, so to speak. Like, you know, this is getting kind of tiresome. It's like we've seen the reflections, we've seen him talking to himself before, so to get that, you know, the physicality of it, and to have him use his brother, Oscar Isaac's brother, as, you know, to act the opposite of it, was a nice way as well, because who knows you better than your brother, so to speak. So it feels more genuine, that kind of interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So then this is the part. I don't even know how to describe it.
This is the part where everyone's brain broke even more after they would already been broken.
Right. Already broken. And they're like, let's go down the hallway. Oh, there's the third sarcophagus. Cool. Let's keep going down the hallway. Oh, there's the giant hippo god lady. And then the voice is like, and you're just like, what is happening? And then, so I don't even know how to say the name. It's like Taweret is my guess, right? So, because I Googled like Egyptian hippo god, and I think that's how I found her, but because I don't know. And she's like the god of life. So, and childbirth or something. So I'm like, is she trying to keep him alive? Is she somehow tied to this? The gods, like because to me, like if she's like involved in life, right? Yes, childbirth. Is this her trying to keep him alive after he's been shot? Is she involved in that? Or is she just a weird hippo god thing that they thought this would be fun to throw in here and blow everyone's minds at the end of an episode? It could be either way. Josie, how did you feel when you saw the whatever her name is, the Egyptian god hippo lady?
I think you are definitely onto something because as did you, I just Googled, and she also represents life, regeneration, and rebirth.
Oh, see, there you go.
So hopefully that is a gateway to him coming back, because we have seen that despite Khonshu being ostracized and by the other gods, there are specific gods that do care for him. And hopefully this is someone seeing the good in Mark and Steven and being like, hello, let's bring you back because we can't let this happen. So hopefully we that is the gateway to getting him back. Because again, we are dealing with mythology, so anything's possible.
Exactly. And they were like, let's pick the craziest one. Marvel's like, what can we do? Let's pick a giant hippo lady that will just confuse everybody. Andrea, because I was like, who is this? I had to Google because I was like,
yeah, I had to Google to shoot. I mean, she was familiar enough. Like the motif is like familiar, but I didn't like know offhand. So I had to Google. And that was my first thought too, that like maybe she's, you know, connected to bringing him back at some sort, because we know he just got shot and we don't know what, you know, and he looked like he got shot pretty badly. So, but now that we're talking about this, I do wonder if it's a type of thing where when he's brought back, like if he is brought back, like we're theorizing, if he's going to be brought back differently, like, and just differently in terms of like, are him and Mark are like Steven and Mark going to be brought back together? Are they going to be like different? Like just the way that he's brought back, is he going to be brought back like the way he was before, or is it going to be in a different way with like or maybe this is how he's brought back with a third personality? Like maybe that's how we get our third personality. I don't know.
Yeah, the other one gets out of the sarcophagus and it's like, wait for me.
That would be that's like we were talking about Marvel humor, like not like that literally would be like thing. You jump out and like run up to the hall. Wait for me, I'm coming. Don't forget. I want to see it now.
I know. Now I'm gonna be disappointed, Josie. If they don't give us that, I'm gonna be like, what is this?
Or probably they'll just be like, because what I've seen on the Twitter, because there are a lot of people from episode 1 that started theorizing like, oh, we are getting this other personality. Like maybe Steven and Mark are like, who are you? No, you're not coming with us.
Right, back up.
Too many people already.
Right, exactly. We don't need another one. We're good. We're good. Michael, how did you feel about that cliffhanger in this episode?
It just again threw me out for a loop, and that's when because you guys are mentioning how she's the god of life, I was thinking maybe this is the mysterious like mother we haven't heard the voice of because
I have
pregnancy. So yeah,
I
so
like that.
Yeah, that's.
But she sounded so young and like very bubbly. Like maybe not. I don't know, but at the same time, there has to be some sort of connection because we haven't seen her voice, or seen the face behind the voice or the thing. So yeah, that was why I'm trying to stick to that theory, but I recognize that it may be a little faulty.
Listen, there are no wrong theories in Marvel. I mean, they're all wrong technically, right? Marvel is the only one who knows what they're doing.
The series,
Mephisto. Everything is Mephisto.
Right. Everything is Mephisto, or sometimes it's just an engineer that's not even Reed Richards. You never know. You never know when it comes to Marvel. All right. I know it's so hard to choose. But Josie, favorite moment of the episode?
I think I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna try not to think about it too much. So I'm just gonna go at that scene where I was gonna say Rachel Weisz, where Layla is, because again, it did bring back that nostalgia of everything we've grown up with and all those kinds of movies. So just when she's trying to cross, because they gave in to the horror again, as Michael mentioned, just looking at the black void and the hand and the clicking and everything, and you think she's gonna fall, and then she's like still hanging there, and it's like, that's my girl. So that's my favorite moment.
Awesome. What about you, Andrea?
Yeah, I think for me, definitely when Steven and Mark are finally in the same room talking to each other, just because it's just such a cool scene to see Oscar Isaac be even more awesome at what he does than we've already seen, when he is like going back and forth with himself. Just to see it in that moment where he's physically in front of himself was really cool.
Yes. Michael, what about you?
I have to say the exchange between Harrow and Layla, because we've seen her so strong, and for that sequence, for that scene to pretty much shine a light on Harrow's master manipulation and take advantage of her moment of weakness when she's alone and she's at her lowest, kind of a low point. I thought that was a great scene between the two.
Yeah, again, it shows just how good. I mean, like we talk about Oscar Isaac, but I mean, Ethan Hawke is phenomenal too. Of course. But Oscar really does continue to steal pretty much every episode with incredible scenes. Those are all great moments. So to not repeat, I will say, and it's going to sound awful, but like when he gets shot, and I don't mean when he gets shot, that's not what I mean, but that whole visual moment, and then when you pop back and it leads to that movie where you're just like, what is happening? I have no idea, but I'm here for the ride. It's Marvel. This is what I expected. Fantastic episode yet again. Real quick before we go, Josie, how did this rank along the episodes for you?
Oh, this is my top. Now I have like 4, 1, 2, 3, but that'll probably change by the end of it all. But definitely, like, I think 4 is definitely the best. They've proven they do have a very good understanding of the character and where they want the show to go. So now it's just a matter of landing.
Exactly. It's always stick the landing. Andrea, how about for you?
Yeah, definitely the top episode so far for me. It just turned everything around. Not that things were boring or that I wasn't enjoying it, but it just really kicked it to the next level and kind of brought back that excitement that I felt from like the first episode. And I was like, ooh, what is this? Like, what is this new show? What are they doing? What am I learning?
It's always fun when they are like, now it's time to theorize. Enjoy.
Exactly.
Like, thank you, Marvel. This is what we all wanted.
Yep.
Michael, how does it rate for you?
I would have to rate it probably the top of the 4 right now, because like everyone's been saying, this has been a culmination of all the episodes that came before it. It's this treasure hunting, it's a psychological horror, it's this, it's all of that all into one episode, but tenfold basically. And I really liked how it's all executed with an inventive twist that no one ever saw coming.
Yeah, no one saw that coming. I don't know how they came up with, I don't know. Marvel is a genius. They're genius. Everyone there. The writers are incredible. Yeah, for me, same thing. It's easily my favorite. I love the horror elements of it, how they really got brutal and crazy, and the thing straight up murdering people in front of people, and you're just like, what is happening? Layla really, really, really getting her moment in the sun. Of course, Harrow being super manipulative, and then the twist where you're like, I don't know what's happening. And I can't wait for next week. And of course, because we all got screeners, we have to wait like a million weeks, unlike everybody else.
Yeah.
But finally, next week is when the episode will come out. We can't wait to watch it. Before we go, Josie, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you again?
Of course, you can find me at the Josie Marie on Twitter and Letterboxd, and you can follow Film Posers at Film Posers basically everywhere.
Awesome. And Andrea?
You can find me on Twitter at _A_Towers, because that underscore is apparently very important. And you can find me writing at Entertainment Weekly and IGN.
Awesome. And Michael?
You can find me at the Nerds of Color, Geeks of Doom, We Live Entertainment, and That's It LA. And all socials, I am Michael J.
You got it. You got it.
I'm going to start doing like this instead of like trying to
I'm
like that.
Just
Wait, there we go.
It's hard.
It's harder than it looks, right?
It's very difficult. You guys, I'm Tessa Smith. You guys can find me at mamasgeeky.com, Mamas Geeky on all social, as well as here on YouTube. And thanks for joining us. You guys let us know your favorite part of this episode down below in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the Hollywood Critics Association YouTube channel. We have a million after shows, and we will see you guys next week when hopefully we get some answers. I don't know. I'm excited for it though. Either way, it's going to be good, I'm sure. We'll see you next time.